What's up, nerds? Mike here, and today I'm reviewing Telltale's Game of Thrones. A new season of the HBO hit series is starting this month, and Sony is giving away the Game of Thrones video game free to PS Plus subscribers. As a fan of both Telltale and Game of Thrones, I was pretty excited to play this one. So, with a $0 price tag, the question is this game worth your time? Telltale's Game of Thrones is split into 6 episodes, each clocking in at a little over 2 hours apiece. Much like other Telltale games, this is a story-based adventure game where the player is tasked with making choices that influence the story. Combat is handled with quick-time events that show up as timed button prompts on screen, which are usually fairly easy to do. If you've played a Telltale game in the last 5 years, you know exactly what you're getting. The game takes place within the events of the show, starting during the infamous Red Wedding. You play as members of House Forrester, a family briefly mentioned in the books, but not yet introduced in the show. Throughout the game, you'll encounter characters from the show, played by and looking somewhat like their TV actors. The title sequence from the show is even recreated in-game, and it all adds up to make the player feel like they're part of the show. Where this illusion starts to fall apart is in the story and the way it unfolds. Since you're playing characters that are not in the TV series, it quickly becomes apparent that no matter what you do, your choices will never have any lasting effect on the larger world. Characters like Tyrion Lannister and Daenerys Targaryen will offer you help, but due to their constraints of adhering to the events of the show, it never feels significant. Much of the story revolves around House Forrester being caught up in the War of the Five Kings, and their rivals in House Whitehill attempting to overthrow their leadership at Ironrath and take possession of their precious ironwood groves. Yes, you heard me right. The story revolves around a bunch of sadistic jerks torturing you over some trees. To say that the writing here doesn't live up to the quality of the TV series is an understatement. The characters in the game are really one-dimensional. Throughout the 6-episode story, your characters never get a chance to develop. Worse yet, your choices lead to failure and death so often, the game feels demoralizing. In the books and the TV show, Game of Thrones is known for killing off characters that the fans don't expect. This device is used to great effect in the show because you get to know and love these characters, so their deaths ultimately come as a real emotional shock. In the game, it is your characters that die, leading not to emotional shock, but anger and frustration. As gamers, we are taught that dying in a game is a state of failure, and if you die, you're bad at the game. Since the game explicitly says that your decisions shape the story, I often felt like I had made a bad decision or somehow played the game wrong. After my initial playthrough, I was so disappointed and disheartened with the outcome of all my decisions, I decided to play through again and this time make all different choices. I thought it would change the story, and perhaps I could get a good ending. I was only more disappointed to find that no matter what choices I made, the story just chugs along on its own. Did you choose to kill your attacker? You're punished. Did you choose to spare his life? You're still punished. It quickly became apparent that your choices don't matter. No matter what you do, no matter how you play, you will fail. You will die. You will lose. I played all the way to the end because I was genuinely curious how the writers were going to wrap up such a hopeless story, how they would tie up all the loose ends. Instead, the ending just leaves your characters, the few who are still alive, dangling in the wind. Nothing is accomplished, nothing is gained, nothing matters. I understand they were setting up for a second season, but they still could have given the stories in this season some kind of closure, but we don't even get that much. In addition to the game's insistence on making you feel miserable, there are technical flaws that mar the experience. Animations are robotic, and the game seemed to suffer from increasingly frequent frame rate stutters and slowdown with each successive episode. The graphics employ a painted look that works sometimes and looks ugly the rest of the time. There is a distracting shimmer effect on the edges of objects that is especially noticeable in the first episode, but seems to get better later in the game. There were times when the lip sync was off, or characters' mouths didn't even move at all. Audio, like voices, sound effects, and music, will drop out for no reason. Sometimes button presses don't register, and the game mechanics seem to change slightly from one episode to the next. There were a few redeeming qualities in Telltale's Game of Thrones, but they are so few and far between, they can't really save what was overall an unenjoyable experience. I will say, the voice acting is pretty good, and some characters' storylines do get interesting around the end. There was one scene where I was playing as the eldest daughter, Mira Forrester, and I weaseled my way into a garden party where I used my cunning to elicit secret information from a rival and use it against an enemy of House Forrester to secure my family's safety. It was one of the most satisfying moments in the entire game, and it felt like what Game of Thrones is all about: manipulation and subterfuge. It was then all dashed to pieces when I found out my choices still had no effect, and the game decided I would have to run for my life anyway. Every time the illusion of choice was broken, I felt duped by Telltale. I know other Telltale games follow a fairly linear story, but they managed to make you feel like your choices had weight, even if it was just window dressing. In Game of Thrones, all pretense of choice is thrown out the window, and you're constantly reminded that you will fail no matter what you do. By the end, I felt stupid for playing, and I wouldn't recommend wasting your time playing Telltale's Game of Thrones, even if it is free. So, what did you think of Telltale's Game of Thrones? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.